This is Miss Lizzie, and I want to welcome you to the Queen Lizzie podcast. Together, we will go through the history of Rosewood, Florida, and watch as the once prosperous town rises out of the bloodshed, fire, and ash to reveal the people, the memory, and the legacy of Rosewood. Okay. Watch every Thursday on Facebook and YouTube, or listen to our story on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Hello, everybody. I am Lizzie Polly Robinson Brown Jenkins, representing not only the Rosewood Foundation, but the personal testimonies and history of cherished friends and family. You are now watching the Queen Lizzie podcast. Today, we're talking with Dr. Marvin Dulaney, ASALA National President, and we are joined by Stephanie Birch and Hazel Gillis.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Hazel Gillis, a board member of the Real Rosewood Foundation and chair of the Scholarship Committee. At this time, as the chair of the Local Arrangements Committee for the 108th Conference for the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, I would like to extend to you, Dr. Dulaney, President of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, to our president and founder of the Real Rosewood Foundation, Lizzie Jenkins, and to our secretary, Stephanie Birch, a welcome. I'm welcoming you to Jacksonville and hope you will come. I know you're coming, so I look forward to seeing each of you in Jacksonville. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mrs. Hazel Gillis. Thank you for the greetings, and we are looking forward to coming to Jacksonville and learning about history. But I want you to know today we have a very special guest, and I am honored to introduce him. Okay, all the way from national headquarters. Okay, and the person I'm talking about or speaking about is Dr. Marvin Dulaney. Welcome, Dr. Dulaney, and thank you for agreeing to appear, be a guest on Miss Lizzie's podcast today.
All right. Well, thank you, Lizzie, for having me on your podcast. I always welcome the opportunity, one, to promote the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and of course, is specifically to let people know that we're coming to Jacksonville to join Hazel Gillis and James Weldon Johnson branch and celebrate African American history and culture for 4 days in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been with the association since the early 1970s. It's almost like my baby. It's a part and parcel of me, going back, as I said, nearly 50 years. And so it's always a wonderful opportunity to tell people about the association. And again, Lizzie, thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. And it is so wonderful. When I reached out to you through one of your employees, she fired right back. When I say fired right back, she wrote me right back and said, you know, the president would love to be on your podcast. I said, what? Couldn't believe it. We are so appreciative. Now, I don't live in Jacksonville. I live in Alachua County, Gainesville area. But I will be there for the 4 days, and I am looking forward. So I want to, before I introduce Stephanie. Stephanie is our board member. She's been with us, and she is our faithful secretary. Well, you know what, Stephanie, maybe I will allow you to introduce yourself now, and then I will come back to Dr. Dulaney and ask him some more questions. Stephanie.
Okay. Okay, there we go. All right. Hi, I'm Stephanie Birch. I am the board secretary. I've been a board member for, since 2019, I believe, and I was former board chair. I formerly was the African American Studies librarian at the University of Florida, and now I am the Africana Studies librarian at the University of Connecticut. I'll be attending the conference as well and presenting on a roundtable with the University of Florida Oral History Program. So I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone. Um, and yeah, is there anything else I should say as an introduction, Lizzie?
Well, not at this time. We are going to
Okay.
bring we are going to bring Dr. Mulaney back, and we're going to ask him some questions. And you all, both of you, feel free to help us make this very, very successful program today. Okay, but my first question to you, Dr. Delaney, uh, what is the significance of hosting the conference in Florida?
Well, it's very significant. Our founder, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, started the association back in 1915 as a way of countering the lies and the myths and the distortions about African American history that existed at that time in the early 20th century throughout the country. So we're sort of emulating and following in his footsteps by coming to Jacksonville, and also, of course, more specifically to Florida, because Florida's passed some legislation against anti-wokeness. It's condemned the
Mm-hmm.
AP African American History class. It's done a
Yes.
whole variety of things to
Yes.
basically hinder the teaching of African American history in the state of Florida. And so we want to come and promote the teaching of
Mm-hmm.
African American history and culture and say to Floridians, politicians and non-politicians, that our history, that is the history of African Americans, is important. It is part
Yes.
and parcel of American history. And there
Absolutely.
is no American history without our history. And so
Absolutely.
we want to challenge everything that's going on there in terms of
Yes.
trying to hinder the teaching of American history, to ban books, um, to pass legislation about being anti-woke. Um,
Yes.
so the NAACP has issued a travel advisory for Florida, basically telling people don't go to Florida. Well, we want to do the opposite. In fact, we've sort of
Yes.
adopted the slogan that we're running to the fight, so that
Yes.
we are going to promote and do things that Florida doesn't support, but we think we're doing it in a good spirit, in a spirit of trying to enlighten and assist people to learn and support the teaching of African American history and culture. We don't want to come there, in any negativity in terms of attacking people. We want to promote the positive good that comes from teaching the whole history of our country, and of course, specifically teaching about the African American experience in this country, because it is one of the most important. There's no America without us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear you say you're not running away from it. You are running to it. Perfect.
Yes.
And I'm waiting for you because I got a message for somebody that's in our mansion up there. He will not ban Black history. This is a history that we have lived. My great grandmother walked from Mississippi in 1839, age 13, and she has worked to build her legacy in Archer. He can't stop that. He cannot stop it. We will not allow it. And I'm not being negative. I am being truthful. And as I tell people, history is who we are. Without
Mhm.
history, we are nothing. And we are the voice for the next generation. And this is my
Yeah.
passion too about speaking on
Yeah.
history. My aunt was the
Yeah.
Rosewood school teacher for
Mhm.
7 years. She survived, told my mother her tragedy about what happened to her in Rosewood. And my mom said, you will keep this history alive. And, sir, For 30 years plus, I have done the research. And I was 5 years of age in 1943 when Mom
Mhm.
sat us down and told us the whole story about Rosewood. What came to my mind? Roses in the wood. When she said massacre, I didn't have any idea what she meant about Rosewood massacre. But one thing for sure, she made sure I never forgot. And I'm going to give pause so that Stephanie or Hazel can speak in a few minutes. Right now, that's about time for our first half. We are going to head to a quick break and we'll be right back after
Mhm.
a word from our sponsors.
Attention all Gator fans, Meldon Law is giving away a chance to experience the Florida-Georgia game like never before. 2 nights stay at the Hilton on the River, dinner at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, 2 premium tickets to the game, and a football signed by Coach Billy Napier, and much more. Go to the Meldon Law Facebook page and look for the VIP experience for two. Good luck and go Gators!
I am Black History.
I am Rosewood Black History.
I am Florida and America's Black History. And you are too. January 1st, 1923, the KKK insurrectionists attacked Rosewood, killing 5, burning it down.
Because a white woman lied and cried, a black man assaulted me. Rosewood redevelopment is on its way.
Want to help? Visit rosewoodflorida.com.
Welcome back to Queen Lizzie Podcast, brought to you weekly from the Steve Spurrier Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. We are here with Dr. Marvin Dulaney, as well as Stephanie Birch and Hazel Gillis from Asala. Okay, Stephanie, before the break, we were about to talk about the theme. You and Dr. Delaney were about to talk about the theme. So, Stephanie, would you like to start it off about Black resistance?
Sure. Yeah. So I thought you guys were really heading in that direction of getting to the theme. So the idea of running towards the fight in the really the retrenchment that we're seeing in the recent years of this anti-wokeness conversation, all the rhetoric around critical race theory, and we were expecting to see Kimberly Crenshaw at the conference as well, who is a kind of leading voice and scholar in critical race theory. And also rolling back of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as Black Studies curriculum, all of these things. And so the idea of really running towards the fight and having a presence of a National Black Studies Conference within the state of Florida with all of these things going on, really, I think is an embodiment of or a demonstration of Black resistance. And I think also when we talk about the Rosewood Massacre, there is, and events like it, there is, we forget to talk about the ways in which, or to frame it also through a lens of resistance, that history through that lens. So yeah, and that's one of the things I'm really interested in kind of exploring and talking about today, which we've done in past events, Lizzie, but yeah.
Yes. And Dr. Delaney?
Let me just say that Black resistance is quite appropriate for the conference we're holding in Jacksonville, Florida, because what we're doing is an example of resistance. You know, again, we're resisting the idea of not coming to Florida, running away, like you said, running in the other direction. Instead, we're running to it. Now, we pick themes every year primarily for Black History, but also for the conference, so that when people come and present at the conference, they have an idea of what we're looking for. Black resistance is perfect because we can cite music, we can cite literature, the arts, and we can cite those civil rights organizations as all as examples of Black resistance.
Yes.
And so it's just so great that we picked that topic for this year. I did a presentation yesterday, and one of the things I looked at was music. Looking at from the sort of old slave songs and spirituals all the way up to hip hop, because you can hear this sort of constant theme in the music of African Americans. And so it's been great. I went back and I played one of the tunes from The Temptations, a ball of confusion about that. This is the world today. It's a ball of confusion. And of course, played the Public Enemy's, fight the power. And so indeed, this is what we're bringing to Jacksonville. This attitude and this idea that we have to continue to fight and to resist. And of course, I cited, and again, excuse me for talking too long. I cited the literature, the slave narratives. Frederick Douglass's narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, written by himself, where he talks about fighting the slave breaker and resisting him, breaking him, and making him into a slave. And of course, eventually Douglass runs away. I cited the story of Harriet Jacobs' incidents in the life of a slave girl, where she hid out in the attic in Monroe, North Carolina, of her owner's house, actually her grandmother's house, next to her owner's, and basically stayed there for 7 years to resist being, raped by the slave owner and having her children sold. She eventually escapes to New York. And so it's these type of stories that we will be highlighting at the conference, showing this sort of history and tradition of resistance among African Americans and in all that we faced here in these United States.
Absolutely. And I remember when I was in college, a junior in 1960, and I was chosen to sit at the lunch counter. We resisted, my worst experience, okay? But we resisted. Someone had to do it. My mom was at home calling the college saying, you better not go down there and sit at that lunch counter. But my peers said, Robinson, you are going. And guess what? I did. I'm proud. The one thing I regret, Dr. Mulaney, I was not booked into a jail. Had I been booked, I would have had my credentials to show that I was put in jail. But I fought the fight. And as you say, we have always resisted, because Mama used to tell me stories about people leaving in the middle of the night with their families, escaping. Why? Because they have damaged what was he called? The slave master in some way. They didn't talk about it, but they knew about it. So that's just, there are other ways too that we have resisted. And like you said, through song, poetry, dance. My great-grandmother was also raped, by the slave masters, but she never forgot to talk back. And you know what I mean when I say talk back? She did. She always had the last word, and they would always knock her out, left her for dead also. But the young lady, one of the wives on that wagon, said to the man who knocked her out, pick her up and put her on this wagon. And she nursed her back to health. We have been there, done that. Yes, it is our history. Can anybody tell it like we tell it, and they don't feel what we feel?
Yes.
Hazel, or anybody else? I don't want to take up all the time. But you know what I'm going to say right here, you listeners out there, I have written a book. You can find my book on rosewoodflorida.com. You may purchase the book, if you're interested. And it's a book that I sent to our governor, and I asked him to read it. I haven't heard from them. I sent it for Black History Month. I have not heard from them. He doesn't have to read it, but he knows about it. And he knows about me, and I want to one day meet him. And Hazel, you were about to say something. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, this is our history, and we have to continue to tell our true history.
Yes.
And I've been a part of the Real Rosewood Foundation since 2010, and we
Yes.
continue to tell our history through a solid also. So thank you for inviting me to your podcast, Lizzie.
Mhm.
You're welcome. You're
Can
welcome.
I?
Sure.
Okay. I just wanted to add that what we're talking about, and I'm hoping or I'm expecting to also hear folks bringing this into their presentations at the conference, is the Black radical tradition. And so when for Black History Month here at University of Connecticut Library, I did a display of library materials here within the library that focused on Black resistance, but also this really multifaceted lens or different methodologies of resistance that we have seen historically, but also contemporaneously. So, and just to kind of, this is not exact really a definition for folks who may be listening of the Black radical tradition, but refers to the collective and multifaceted resistance of Black people to overturn racial order in order to achieve liberation. So it's traced across generations this is what I wrote, from the transatlantic slave system to present day social justice movements. And so we kind of looked at it into three really broad categories. So there's, collective action as a method that really, included things like armed resistance to even the kind of collective action that Lizzie was talking about with, sit-ins at the lunch counters, or today's, Black Lives Matter demonstrations. So tracing these like through lines throughout history, and then everyday resistance, the little things that people have done and are doing to subvert everyday racism and injustice and oppression. And then the Cultural Revolution was another one. So music and film, and even like things like in the 70s with the natural hair movement, and all of the so many different ways in which Black people have, across time, across space, have found ways to not only survive but to thrive. And it's, so yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Dr. Mulaney? I'm
Well, I
sorry,
was going to
Doctor.
say, Lizzie, I was going to say this. You didn't get that mugshot for sitting in back in 1960.
No.
You
No.
should have gotten it, because those are famous now. There's a museum in Atlanta on social justice, on peace and
Uh-huh.
nonviolence, and they have a wall full of the pictures of all those students who sat in and
Uh-huh.
participated in the freedom rides. And those are beautiful pictures. They make you cry in one sense. Of course, I contrast it with those 18 mugshots we've seen recently, and how different they are. All those Black and white students who protested in the 60s, and now they're honored by their mugshots on this big wall. And again, Lizzie, you should have gotten one, because you'd have been up there too, on that wall. But again, it shows resistance of how they are now rewarded for their resistance back in 1960 and 62. But as I said, I contrast those mugshots in 1960 and 62 with the ones we've seen the past couple of weeks or so. Isn't that something? How different they are. Yes,
But
and the meaning of it. Yeah.
And it's history. It is history,
Yes.
those mug shots. I sure
Yes.
wish I had gotten. It's too late now, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, it is too late for me to get that mugshot. But we have come a long ways. We got a long ways to go. And Stephanie, you forgot to tell that I was your Black History speaker this past year in February.
Yeah, you were. That was one of the events that I was referring to. So, as part of that exhibit, we also had a couple events. So we had a virtual discussion with Lizzie, specifically talking about or reframing or thinking about Rosewood history through a lens of Black resistance. And we also, prior to that discussion, had a film screening of the 97 film by John Singleton.
Yes.
For Connecticut students and community members who may have been unfamiliar with the history of Rosewood and the events that took place. We also had Dr. Rick Stevenson from the UF African American Studies program also come and do a lecture on his work. So, yeah.
Yes. And Dr. Mulaney, were you about to say something else?
Yes, I want to highlight a couple of programs that we're having in Jacksonville during the conference. We're going to kick it off on the Wednesday evening of the 19th at what's the name of the church?
Bethel.
Hazel?
The Bethel.
Yes, we're kicking it off at Bethel Baptist Church in downtown Jacksonville that evening at 6 o'clock. And that's open to the public. And again, the topic is going to be the importance of teaching African American history. Then on Wednesday, we will have some public programs in the afternoon that anyone can come to. One of the things we're going to talk about that morning are the Freedom Schools that are in Florida now at 3 of our branches. And then on Thursday evening, we're going to be in James Weldon Johnson Park reading banned books. And me and the presidents from the Florida branches, we're going to read from the 1619 Project, which of course is one of the banned books, and in 19 states across the country, they've banned even talking about the 1619 Project, this major project that was done by the New York Times in 2019, commemorating when the first Africans were brought here in the slave trade in August of 1619. So those are 3 programs, 3 days that I hope people will come out. And again, that community meeting on Tuesday evening is free. The plenary sessions on Wednesday afternoon are free. And of course, the banned book reading at James Weldon Johnson Park in Jacksonville is also free.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I plan to see you at all 3 of the above. And I'm just looking forward to shaking your hand and touching your soul. Okay?
Sure. Yes, indeed.
Okay, I am continuously humbled, honored, and blessed to meet people daily and invite them to join in peace building, healing, and reconciliation through learning about the history of Rosewood. That will wrap up today's episode. I am Queen Lizzie. Until next time, this is my Rosewood story, and I'm sticking to it. And I have a special shout out to Coco Gert, Florida Proud. Thank you. Goodbye.